car strapped down in the impending doom of Ohio thunderstorms. But yeah, get this thing back to Michigan, start working on the wiring.
We're hoping for the best out here.
All right, the Integra's made its way back to my place, and I'm starting to dig into what we're working with. So there's some good news in here, and there's some bad news in here. But overall, I think we got a good plan to get it up to the level we're expecting for next year, and it shouldn't be too hard of a task to get it there. So let's dive in deeper and see what we're working with. So the route we decided to take to simplify some of this wiring and make the setup a little more clean and reliable was to move to just a dedicated switch panel. Again, this is just a track car. It doesn't need a lot of the wiring that's in there for speakers and, you know, check engine light or brights or whatever that might go to that cluster. So being we had the CJ's engine harness in the car already, we took a look at another one of his products and we went with his race switch K-series setup. So this thing is pretty awesome. Comes with switch panel. It's already pre-populated for, you know, the things you definitely need, like ignition and fuel and your fan. And then it comes with 2 accessory circuits that we can wire whatever we think we need. CES underglow being #1 priority. So it comes with the switch panel, and then comes with a relay box with all your necessary fuses. So this is already pre-set up. Already wired and pinned into K-series connectors. So this will go to the engine harness and to the ECU, making that super simple to install. And then it comes with pigtails to wire everything else we need as far as like fuel pump, power, and the fan and everything like that. So this should greatly simplify the wiring. It should totally upgrade our pit cred, really make us look like we know what we're doing, and overall makes for a easier package for us to work with in the future. So the first thing we found after we took the bumper off is the battery is mounted up front in the corner here. So I'm assuming this is from the time this car spent in a previous life drag racing. I'd imagine having some weight over the front of the car helps getting some traction, but for a front wheel drive track car, definitely not the most ideal spot. So I think we'll be looking to relocate the battery somewhere in here, maybe passenger side footwell or a little bit behind the seat there, but definitely relocate that. Thankfully, it was an Optima battery, so no need to purchase anything new. I think we can just reuse what we have. Moving on from where the battery is, started digging around under the hood, and good news, what we found is we have a CJ's wiring engine harness. So I didn't know about this company, the owner Carlos, so we were looking around for some other parts to get for the car, and I found his harness is probably one of the better options out there. So this was really exciting to find underneath the hood, and should definitely make rewiring this thing a lot easier, knowing that everything to the engine is going to be, you know, took care of and done right. So, you know, this harness is all labeled, wrapped in, you know, twist wrap. Looks to be a pretty nice piece. So that was definitely a good find underneath the hood. We got all the wires out of the Integra, so that was a pretty quick job actually. Nothing tricky. And now we got a nice blank canvas to work with. A little tricky getting the little wire around the steering column there, but I was just being stubborn, didn't want to take it out. Got the floor harness. I think the only thing that's left is maybe the harness going up to the hatch. But yeah, it wasn't bad. So what we have now is a graveyard of what was in there. So we're going to tear into this harness here. This is the old floor harness, but I want to use it to pull the wires for the taillights out. That way I don't have to completely run new stuff there. And the rest of the stuff, I don't know, probably no use for us anymore. Maybe these power cables or something, but I have a whole lot of new parts over here to go in. So I'm gonna get to working on cutting this stuff up. All right, a little bit of a mess, but we've got driver taillight, passenger taillight, all the wiring up to these two connectors. So next, I'll have to figure out what are these connectors going to, what are all the signals, and do I need to steal anything else from harness over here. My plan was just to wire into this guy here. This looks like, you know, just the brake sensor, but looks like there's maybe a couple other things going, so have to look at some circuitry maybe, but this should work well for what we need. I took the brake sensor out so I could figure out where this thing goes, and looks like it goes on this big main kind of engine room harness. I don't really feel like taking this guy apart and figuring out where this goes, so I think I'm just gonna cut this branch off and then just hardwire it into the mess over there on the workbench. So if we keep the OEM switch, keep the OEM bracket, that'll be nice. Should get the brake lights working again. So I was testing everything out. I got everything wired, you know, and of course I put all the protection on the wires and installed them, and everything is like permanently in the car. Start testing it, and I turn on the light switch, and I get a driver's taillight. I get no passenger taillight, but I got both running lights. And then when I would hit the brakes, one of them would light up. On the driver's side would get a little bit brighter, and then the passenger side would come on. So it was working. Then I would let off the brakes and it wouldn't work. This was very confusing. So what did I discover? This little ground, that this terminal kind of goes on the side here in this housing. Basically there was no ground to the socket for the taillight. So that's why we had no lights. Took me about an hour to figure this out, and yeah, I was kind of upset. So anyway, working on an old car. This is what, 22 years old. Check the grounds. That's step number one. That's a battery. So we got the battery moved into the back. Our drag car remnants, we'll call them. This little flat plate welded in here is fantastic. Made mounting this battery box really easy. Otherwise, I'm not real sure why people buy this kit from Summit. It's not much of a kit. It's really just a box, and you got to drill a bunch of holes. And I don't know, it's a little cumbersome, but whatever, we got it mounted. So battery will live safe life back here. A ground cable. Found a nice spot welder bracket there for the ground. And then looking at something like this for the power wire. Not totally set on that just yet. And then we've got a kill switch going up there. So in the previous video on the Integra, kind of overview of the car, this was one of the biggest issues we had, was this ECU was just kind of laying down here on the floor. Just with some zip ties, not really attached to anything. But this should be a nice spot. Obviously it's loose right now, not finally tightened down, but once it is, should be a nice spot. It'd be out of the water, out of the way of if we're loading anything in the car and it could get damaged. It's tucked up here, and kind of set it and forget it is the goal. Yeah, we've got the K-Pro ECU mounted here. We've got the relay box, which is kind of replacing the factory stuff from the Integra. So we have it mounted here, and then a power distribution mounted to send power to things like, you know, the gauges, taillights, things like that. I had this piece of aluminum plate laying around the shop, so I used that and got some mounts from Amazon or eBay. So these are like light bar mounts. So people use these on their Jeeps and stuff, I guess. But anyway, they're really cheap and really robust and strong, and can kind of get creative. I don't have a welder, so we're trying to keep everything kind of like a bolt-on affair. That way it can be adjusted or tweaked if we ever need it. But this turned out really nice. I'm going to finish wiring everything kind of to this location. And yeah, hopefully this serves us well through the season. Okay, the wiring's finished. So getting ready to fire this thing up for the first time with completely gutting it. So It came into the shop under its own power. Let's hope it can leave under its own power. That is the goal. Try to not make things worse around here. It's nothing exciting, honestly. A lot of tedious kind of cleaning things up. Just making sure that none of this costs us a session next year. So ultimately, this was all for peace of mind and to get Seth some switches to play with, which I don't know. You can decide how much value that is. But let's go through some of the big things we did and why it made the car better. First thing we decided to conquer was the battery. After the battery, we wired up a dedicated circuit for the taillights. So I tore apart that factory wire harness and just gutted what we needed to power the taillights. Chased that pesky ground that was causing me some trouble early on. And got that sent up to the factory brake switch. And now we have lights. The other big task was wipers. So we've got the wiper motor wired to the factory stock. We've got the ECU and the relay box all mounted underneath the dash bar here. That'll get cleaned up once we get the IP finally mounted. Underneath the hood, not much yet as the engine is coming out next. So we'll clean up that engine harness once that happens. The big thing was putting a dedicated circuit to the fan, getting a new ground from the transmission, and getting everything routed through that factory grommet here to come into the engine bay. We got power leads for lights, and yeah, pretty simple going into there. And then the other big item was a kill switch. So Master Power, it didn't have one when we got it. It did have the factory key, so I'm assuming that was kind of in lieu of the kill switch. But now we have, a dedicated kill switch to kill the power in the need of an emergency and save the battery when it's not in use. We got the switch bank that'll get mounted to the dash once it goes in the car. And yeah, overall just a lot less failure points and cleaner setup. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if this thing works.